Grifter's Bible, a novel by El Shaboons, read by El Shaboons, with sound design by Monumental Sonic Architecture. Chapter 26, Totentanzen. Good morning, Dodge City! Good Friday, sinners! Seth sang. This is the day, this is the day. He thumbed the mic and barked like a carny. Rejoice, pilgrims! Follow the sound of my voice to where the Spirit of the Lord is! Come watch a true manifestation of Holy Ghost power! He keyed the mic off and directed Dwayne's route through a shortcut of side streets to the fairgrounds. By Good Friday morning, every culvert, motor inn, and RV park was filled in by a massive influx of festival goers that hadn't been able to take the entire week off from work. The sidewalk traffic grew thick that way. Oh, jeez. I craned my neck when Dee rounded the last corner. Arterial traffic was a calcified vein of campers, minivans, and station wagons all inching toward the fairgrounds for the festival. Dwayne stomped the brakes with both feet. The axles clamped up. The street team was thrown forward in their seats. The bus snorted like a bull and spit air on the blacktop. We came to an abrupt halt at the back of the long line of vehicles waiting to merge into the line to get into the fairground parking lot. Seth stood in the aisle with his feet planted like a captain at sea. He had a big dumb grin slapped across his face. Now this is what I'm talking about. He clapped his hands and rubbed them together like a rodent. Dee had no choice but to drive slowly, so Seth had plenty of time to work the mic accosting pedestrians. People were cooking breakfast on the side of the road waiting for the gates to open. Ad hoc choirs were belting out hymns up and down the line. Seth struck up a new song every block we inched. My eyes were wide. It was ridiculous. I gawked at the throngs of pedestrians navigating between the cars, piling through the chain-link barricades, and marching down the coned path. I traced their vector to an open-air rodeo barn sitting just down the hill at the end of our long road. Ah! Seth opened the door and went to find an audience to bring back for the show. Here we go, y'all! Lester came down the aisle and the others followed, all yapping proverbs and platitudes as they jumped out like paratroopers. Each one hit the road in imitation of Seth, strutting just as loud and tall as their man. What you want me to do about this bus? Dwayne leaned his elbows on the steering wheel. I looked around. The gridlock had the bus hermetically sealed in a 2-lane standstill, at least until a few more cars moved up in the line. Try and get this thing turned around. Point it out back towards the north in case we have to make a getaway. I could hear Seth's harmonica calling. His little army marched down the hill between all the cars, past the booths, and right onto the midway like he was walking into his own room to retrieve his phone. There were Christians everywhere. It spun my head. I wouldn't know where to start, but Seth was laser-guided. When I caught up to him, he was dispatching little groups from the street team to areas in the crowd outside of the Reverend's venue. Y'all do like we said after that, you hear? They nodded and left him standing at the back of the line for admission. The arena was well on its way to capacity. Trumpets and trombones rocked the walls of the venue from inside. I followed the martial sound of a drum line and peeked through a cracked side door. A Baptist college marching band was on stage doing tiny maneuvers in the limited space. I caught an eyeful of the general admission area in front of the stage. I saw a dense pit of souls behind the barricades. The standing room crowd stretched back past midfield. The bleachers were blanketed with homemade banners and the seats were quickly filling in on both tiers. I could hear them chanting over the insistent thrum of their feet, stamping along with the band. I walked back over to the melee bottlenecking at the south entrance. Folks, Christians, give me your listening ears. This is important. Seth spoke as bold as day to the switchbacks. The end is here. The end is now. But don't run inside. That's not the way. He wagged a finger. Seth threw his right fist high. I bring hope out of fear with this hand. A touch of thunder added to the theatrics. The square standing in line began to murmur. Yesterday when I entered the city, I brought the sun with me and ended the terrible storm so you could watch the parade. Seth raised his left hand and pointed up. Today, I've held the rain above our heads at bay long enough to speak to you now. Little conversation started breaking out amongst the ticket holders. Seth lowered his finger and pointed at the Reverend's rally. Do not cling to this withered old vine when the rains come. Little conversation sparked head-up discussions. There are strong branches on the Lord's mighty tree, he postured. The crowd was all about this random stranger. I will hold you up out of the flood. My light will be your guide. I invite you to march with me. The cell phones came out. Seth lifted his hands. Do not sing unclean songs with your lips, and do not allow vulgar wax to deafen your ears. Waste not your worship on a villain such as this. He waved at the zip change marquee reading, The Right Reverend Randall Roberts returns. He smirked at the tagline, Sold out. Seth crossed his arms in stage disgust. I bet. He pointed at the Reverend's posters on the wall. This one comes to turn your prayers into dollars. Seth hung his head for a second. Yeah, it ain't right. Lester's voice popped up sober with concern. Jesus ain't about stuffing your wallet. Nutty Fruitcakes and the others started to pop off from inside the crowd. The street team created ripples in the ranks at the back of the line. The fish began to float over towards the sparkle in the stream. Seth looked up and pounded his chest with his fist. I didn't come all this way to blow smoke. He pointed at the stadium and then coiled his finger into a fist. I came here today to find the truest of believers. What I do is not magic, and it is not a lie. He dropped his voice down low. It is the will of the Lord. The Lord! The Lord! The street team shouted as one. Seth let out a rebel yell. His unbridled voice met the multitude. Two huge waves crashed together. Thunder rolled. A tide had turned. There was an agreement of applause, nodding, and awe. He had them. Seth's chest was heaving with the achievement. Now I invite all y'all to an old-time demonstration of hardcore Holy Ghost power like you folks haven't seen in decades. I don't ask you for a cent up front, but y'all have got to come now. Leave this pit and come inside the house that I've prepared for the Lord. Seth threw up both hands. He shouted, Walk with me! Then he started forward and never looked back. He didn't need to. Seth knew his aim was true. The queue started boiling. The switchbacks hemmed and hawed. When the street team left their pockets inside of the crowd, ticket holders began to step out of line. Once the mass of paying customers had seen a crowd forsake the Right Reverend, whole swaths began to peel off and join the train. The switchbacks dwindled. The walk-ups turned tail and followed. The Right Reverend's sold-out show was leaking people like a bloody nose. A cheer went up inside the arena. The Right Reverend's band kicked in. Seth took everyone toward the gates quickly in case security tried to stop us. The sheep followed the shepherd out into the tarmac. The PA whined throughout the midway as the Right Reverend began his opening number. Seth led his acolytes back between the cars still waiting to enter the park. I saw the bus pulled over to our right. Are they just supposed to follow us? I jogged to keep up with Seth. He looked at his phone and then looked back at the multitude in his wake. No. He paused and thought. Fat man got his parade yesterday. His voice was grim, and his tone had teeth. Today, he raised his finger in resolution. I get mine. He stared at the sky and nodded. Yeah, I can make it in time. You and Dee take the bus back to the venue. Have the band and my microphone ready. You're walking back? It seemed like it would take forever. A drop of rain hit my cheek. Another hit my glasses. Seth smelled the clouds and then sighed back at all of the people. He turned around grinning with his chin way up. No, I'm flying back. Dwayne pulled out past the crowd and around to the stop sign to turn west onto Wyatt Earp. We watched a line of 18-wheelers pass in slow motion. Massive flocks of crows and fork-tailed barn swallows zoomed overhead, bisecting the truck's vector, going northwest post-haste.
Well, look at all that!
D pointed with his chins. A shadowy wedge of mockingbirds overtook us. They flew ahead and joined other flocks already circling the gig like a dirty halo. Dwayne hung a left into the parking lot. There was already a long corridor of 18-wheelers leading to the venue. A crowd was already lining up at the front door. Mary was standing in the middle of it all.
I got plugs with every trucker in the Midwest. I just asked them if they wouldn't mind stopping and picking up some of our people from back home.
She giggled like a little girl.
Miracles abound if you whoop them into shape.
She shook her head.
They're on the way, Mama.
Dwayne held his phone up.
Brother Joe said strike up the band and get on their beat. Go on now.
Mary hopped back and forth on her tippy toes and kissed Dwayne's cheek.
I'll be right in.
She yelled at his back as the shadows in the hall swallowed him whole. Then Mary turned back to the parking lot.
Come and get it, y'all. He's on his way.
I could hear Beryl in the gym clicking his sticks together for the count-in. The kick drum thumped like a shotgun in a pillow. A murder of crows jumped straight up from the roof and hovered in the middle of the ring of mockingbirds and sparrows. Fat and Dwayne leaned into He's a Mighty Good Leader. I watched the road. I saw our sold-out show marching proudly onto school property. The prairie filled with the sound of music.
Always.
The chorus rose up like the song of the locust. The flock reached the parking lot. They poured forward down the aisle of semis. I watched Seth riding the wave of walkers, a vision in white washing up on the tide of 1,000 feet. The rain began in earnest. I broke for the lighting nest. The step-down converter kicked in. I watched the praying floor. The dipoles twinkled in preset patterns that corresponded to the rhythm of the microburst each solenoid was firing. I dropped a filter into my display and a diffusion tensor simulator lit up with a net of purple lightning. The Beast Mark II lifted its head out of slumber. The Mandelbrot set defined the virtual cytoarchitectonic topography typical along the edges of the toroidal well. The Fourier lines that represented the electrical influence being exerted on the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes sawtoothed and then settled into their individual wave shapes inside of the cord. The beast shook to sleep from its horns. The magnetic field massaged the cortical folds of the thalamus. The branch cables tensed with sensitivity. Climbing gyri and galloping down through the sulci, the beast reached its full clip. I typed in the permission sequence and held my finger over the enter key. The gasoline from the generators was making me high. I had to get some air. I hit enter and left. You got a problem, dude. Billy Goat walked me over to the root cellar. Your tough nut is gone. Billy Goat lifted the splintered door. The wood was busted out in the lock and hasps were lying at the bottom of the stairs. I kneeled down and lit up the dark notch with the light on my phone. The inside of the door was spattered in peach preserves, stewed pectin, and shards of broken ball glass. Evil growled at the smell. Just keep your eyes open during the show. Lock all the doors. He's not gone for good. The venue was beyond capacity by the time that we got back. There was still a crowd choking the front entrance. The ass fell out of the sky and the rain came in buckets. A collective groan of woe rose up from the souls left out when Billy Goat flipped the deadbolt on the front door. Seth walked through a gauntlet of grasping hands to the steps of the stage. Mary handed him his microphone and hugged him tight. He gave her a peck on the cheek and ascended. Velvet T welcomed Seth to the stage. Mary followed up the steps, snapping her fingers. Seth blew a clarion note on his harp. The sound rolled through the imagination like a purple thunderhead in a red sky. The sheep raise their hands high, fingers spread, palms out towards the Lord. An almost precoital sheen glistened on their waiting faces. Tears and smiles filled their wide eyes. There was so much anticipation built up in the air. Seth took that tension and lit a match.
Listen,
Seth put a hand to his ear.
a black rider is approaching. The hour of reckoning is at hand. The mill that turns by the hands of evil men has ground down too many of the faithful. Who can withstand the great day of wrath? Who will walk out undiminished when the long winter is done? The Lord said, seek out the righteous and bring them to me. Those that know my voice will understand and follow.
The wet smell of oxytocin production was a physical presence in the auditorium. Hot muscles rubbed up on one another. A wall of pheromones arose. The glow of community shined out from the sheep's faces. They had found a shepherd that would see them through the hard times. I took in a deep breath. No, the air smelled good. The scent of the storm outside was so strong it filled the auditorium. I was humming. It was heaven. I looked to the stage and saw 2 doves land on Seth's shoulders.
How'd those birds get inside?
My head spun towards the back door. It was a cop, there behind the crowd inspecting one of the dye poles. I made a run for it while his back was turned. I got to the edge of the crowd and looked back. The sheep were nodding back and forth, swaying from side to side as the ceremony approached its crescendo. The double doors at the back of the gym opened, and there, behind the backs of the flock, a dozen grain-fed troopers filed in like dark sentries. 12 sheriff's deputies with grim looks on their faces. They serried like pallbearers, 2 positioned at each exit door. They drew their cudgels and assumed guardian posture. Each pair pointed out places in the crowd to one another. They talked into their shoulder mics, then laughed in the direction of the stage. Skulking, their cheeks were bulging with chaw. I disappeared behind the stage. It was the one door they weren't in control of yet. The clock read high noon. I jumped at every shadow on my way to the lighting nest.
Boy, you as nervous as the long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. What's got you spooked?
The drawl was manic, cracking. I turned my head slowly past the red plastic case on the wall to my left. I looked down and saw the long, fat shadow that was cast on the floor to my right. The Norman nose, the pompadour, the double chins were all there.
I hope you ain't thinking about making a run for it.
I heard the soft sachet of his coat sleeve as the Right Reverend lifted his arm. I heard his breath gurgle. I watched the pistol's muzzle tremble in my direction.
It'd be a real shame if I had to stop you.
His throat squawked on a knot of phlegm.
I wish you'd mind your own goddamn business.
The old man gave me the sauce right back with both barrels.
Well, you can shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one fills up first, you goddamn You made this my business when you sent my firstborn to the emergency room.
I didn't do that. The Reverend's lip curled.
You know damn good and well that whooping your boy gave Asa near about killed him. Hell, even half-dead Asa still pointed the finger straight at you. Your name's what he told the sheriff from his hospital bed.
I looked around for something to defend myself. It was too dark to see anything at all.
And that black got my other baby behind bars back in Dallas.
I scanned the hallway for a means of escape. I looked around in the deep crimson glow coming from the exit sign, and my eyes fell on a shiny bullet shape hanging next to the door. An old fire extinguisher.
Boy, you're more trouble than you're worth.
An ancient soul screeched out a dragging step across the concrete floor. I leapt forward like Superman, like I was going to fly over to the fire extinguisher. But I have no athleticism to speak of, so all I did was get my own feet off the ground. The Right Reverend leaned into my path. My forward momentum slammed into him like a side of beef. I shouldered his gun hand and threw my arm over his back.
I held on for dear life as the Right Reverend used me as a cushion to break his fall. An inch or two to the left and I would have cracked my skull on the extinguisher, but I rolled so I only clipped my right shoulder. I couldn't even feel any of it at the time. I was just cold. The Reverend went to his knees, gathering his wits. My arm exploded in white-hot pain as the Reverend pushed on it to lift himself back on 2 feet. Then he pulled me up by the front of my shirt. He pushed me back up against the wall. I saw the shadow as he brought the gun out. My hand shot to the side. I scraped the skin off the back of my hand on the mounting clip. Blood dripped freely onto my shoe. I felt the muzzle touch my side meat. I blindly slapped the gun away from my torso. It fell onto the concrete. It sounded like it weighed a ton.
You can't fight the inevitable, boy.
The Reverend bent and wheezed as he found the gun on the floor. I peeled myself off of the wall and yanked at the fire extinguisher, taking the mounting clips and hardware right along with it. Immediately, the weight was more than I had imagined. It hit the floor and yanked my arm with it. I didn't know if I could get it off the ground. The Reverend stood back up and turned. A ragged breath scorched my lungs. I heave-hoed for all I was worth. He lifted the pistol and pinched. The fire extinguisher didn't so much fly through the air as it limped through the forward motion as it arced down from out of my hands. The Right Reverend's face distorted into a mask of black panic as he made a low-effort dodge out of the fire extinguisher's path. He backed up and slammed into the doorframe with his shoulder. All the air blew out of his lungs and he scrunched up his nose in pain. When I saw that the fire extinguisher had missed the Right Reverend, I got ready to charge straight for the gun. I couldn't take him and the pistol in a struggle, but I could at least make it difficult for him to aim. I stepped forward. I heard the tick-tick of the hammer being drawn. I started to lift my hands up to push the Reverend as I passed by, but I saw the fire extinguisher hit the wall next to the Reverend's hip. The black hose attached to the canister popped loose from its mooring. The hose swung free and the heavy metal nozzle at its tip bullwhipped up and across the bridge of the Right Reverend's nose. Blood pocked forward in a geyser before the fire extinguisher could even hit the ground. It gadong-donged off of the polished concrete floor. It rolled to the side like a rumbling press. The Reverend dropped the gun. Went the pistol's report.
Mother!
The Right Reverend's palsied hands flew up to his nose to stem the tide of blood. The way was wide open. I hot-footed it out of there. I ran back to the lighting nest and locked the door behind me. I froze in my tracks looking out the viewport. A tiny man in a black rain shell was standing calmly at the back of the auditorium by the door. His arms were crossed. He was observing everything with a wry look of appreciation in the tilt of his grin. I just stopped seeing anything else once I saw him. I froze that close to his vicinity. I knew this was James Abraham's handler. This was the man that had hounded my mentor straight into his grave. I'd seen him around Timber Glen. I'd seen him all over Deep Ellum in the past 6 months, sometimes in a Lone Star electric truck. And I'd seen him getting in and out of a Buick with murder-tinted windows plenty of times before. He was the only hunch I had as far as who had killed Joey and Chuck Vu. The black dog looked up and he saw me. The black dog nodded like he knew my face.
Hallelujah! The smoke goes on forever. Babylon will fall in the darkness before our deliverance.
The flock was completely silent as Seth rapped. I remembered the first Sunday, the night of the storm. I pushed too much power through the beast and almost brought the house down.
Do you see that white rider coming down out of the clouds? The King of Kings has come to march on the darkness. Sweet Lord, our God is ready to ride. With the steadfast at his heel, he will heave Satan down and cast out the faithless to the depths.
A splintered hole opened up in the door about 2 inches over from the knob. My stomach mewed like a cornered rat. I grabbed my laptop and then crawled under the desk.
Come out of there, you...
My hands were shaking so bad that it was hard to type. I found my log for that eponymous service. I Control-C'd and Control-V'd a batch of code into the event chain. I crawled out from under the desk and looked through the crack under the door. 2 tiny feet were there.
Sorry, second.
I took a chance and crawled on all fours back over to the viewport.
I peeked down like a mouse. The deputies in black rain shells were occupied with the service.
Here I am.
Seth's toe prodded the open space beyond the footlights. He reached out past the monitors.
The beast and the false prophet will be captured and driven into the lake of fire.
That was the last thing I remember hearing Seth say. He touched his hand to his heart and then he leapt forward. Seth took a knee and tucked into himself. To the sheep he had fallen. Then in their standard practiced movement, Jim, Sarah, Lester, Anna, Fujitsu, Chester, Lipsahoy, all of the street team, wherever they stood, just put their arms out and fell backward into the flabbergasted flock. All around the hall, from the front to the back, they fell in a seismic pantomime. The wave of the manifestation radiated from Seth to the very back of the room. The entire flock was bowled over by the power of a sympathetic mass delusion. The sheriff's deputies were waylaid by the swooning faithful. Seth stood up from where he'd landed next to Lester. Great cities of confusion lay in decimation around him. He looked forward and saw the deputies for the first time. Seth's head swiveled wildly, deciding between fight or flight. Then the beast's power surge visibly asserted itself in the flock. A fountain of vomit erupted out of one poor soul near the wall of toroidal dipoles. A group of sheep unloaded on one of the passing deputies with volcanic force. Within seconds, the magnetic field was fully polluted by a communal nausea. The house was consumed with pitiful retching, and the sheep were mewling like the room was an abattoir. I checked the meter bridge against the outflow levels in the display on my laptop. I had to get rid of evidence. There were black patents to cover up. The Reverend jiggled the doorknob. I opened the gates and let all of the collected electromagnetic power in the dipoles run freely through the lines. I could smell melted plastic. Something electrical was catching fire out there on the floor. The lights in the hall flickered and the crowd jerked in and out of their nausea. A black cloud filled the hall. The light bulbs in the building shattered. Seth pushed Mary off the back of the stage. Dwayne grabbed her. Sparks shot out of the house lights in the ceiling. I saw one of the curtains catch fire. Red velour lit quickly and climbed up the fabric towards the ceiling. Black smoke sprouted out of the air and I dropped as close to the floor as I could get.
You no-good bastard, you!
I put my ear to the ground and looked through the crack at the bottom of the door. I saw the shadow of the pair of feet turn. Then the lights in the hall winked out. I counted to 10, and when the blackness didn't lift, I got up on my knees. I heard an inhuman scream. I saw Seth backstage. His hair was on fire and he was slapping at the back of his head like bees were attacking him, pounding at his skull like he was deranged. The sprinklers woke up at the ceiling. I watched Billy Goat lope into view for a hazy split second, past the picket of police scouring the lip of the stage. He looked back at the deputies groping blindly in the smoke. I watched his cowboy hat float over a heavy pocket of cloud like the tail on a 747. Then it disappeared into the fume. I waited for a second. I saw his cowboy hat emerge backstage from between two speaker towers. Seth never saw Billy Goat heave his right hand high. I could see the whirl of smoke as Billy Goat brought his open palm down on the back of Seth's head. I could see the woof in the fog as all of the air was slapped out of Seth's lungs. Then he stumbled back behind the veil of mystery that he'd sprung from. Seth was gone. The door was giving way. I could see the red darkness from the hallway peeking through the cracks in the wood. I found the file on my laptop. I double-clicked until it opened. The kill switch that I had copied off of Visurimaga would take care of the rest of the evidence. The display turned blue. The lighting fixture sparked. The screen pixelated and half of the lighting pylons toppled. All of my apps froze. For a second, the only light in the auditorium came from the solenoids blinking in and out of life. Another hole in the door opened up. I hefted my laptop at the viewport. Something struck the stucco wall next to my head. Splinters hit my cheek and powdery smoke rose from out of the hole in the wall. The laptop flew into the blackness. There was an explosion, and then the purple afterglow blinded me. I flattened to the ground. Here it comes, I thought. I saw blackness peeking past the dangling hinges as the door ripped away from the frame. I watched it leering for a split second and had just enough forethought to roll out of the way as it toppled and slammed into the floor where I'd just been. The Right Reverend was panting face down in a heap in the hall. Black rain shells filled the room.
Freeze!